we'll start our next topic, which is the sexual reproduction in plants. We have already discussed about the asexual reproduction, the methods of asexual reproduction. We have finished. And now we'll see the sexual reproduction in plants. Usually it takes place with the help of flowers. So we all know that there are so many flowers. They are really very beautiful and colored flowers. So in angiosperms are the plants which have the flowers. The flowering plants are called as angiosperms. Children, you can just underline, oh, 1 second. You can underline it. The flowering plants are known as angiosperms. The flowering plants are known as angiosperms. Angiosperms. Flowers are obtained only from the flowering plants. We can get the flowers only from the flowering plants. There are flowering plants and non-flowering plants also, like crotons. Yesterday we have seen one spider plant. Do it have flowers? No, it won't have. Some plants, they don't have flowers. So there are a few plants which are flowering. So these flowering plants are known as angiosperms in the plant kingdom. So the flower have the reproductive organs. The reproductive organs of flower are calyx, corolla, and rhizome, gynoecium. So these are the parts, reproductive parts of flower. So the typical flower shows the following 4 layers, which are known as whorls of a flower. So the different parts of a flower are calyx, corolla, and rhizome and gynoecium. So if we see, coming to calyx, children, calyx is the outermost green whorl in a flower, which is the outermost. At the bottom, you can find this calyx, the outermost green whorl in a flower. I'll just show you the picture. 1 second. I'll erase it off. I'll show you the picture of the flower. So here you can see the flower. So even you can see the picture of the flower in your book also. You can have this picture in your book also. So now if you see this calyx, if you see first one, calyx, it is the outermost green whorl in a flower. Calyx is made up of sepals. Calyx protects the flower in the bud condition. It protects the flower when it is in the bud condition. Okay. So the outermost green color layer, when the flower is in the form of a bud, then it protects the green color layer of the flower. It protects the bud. It protects the flower before it is bloomed. And now coming to next part, corolla. So this corolla is a second whorl in a flower. It is made up of petals. So corolla is made up of, it is the second whorl and it is made up of petals. Petals are these are the petals. If you see in the flower, you can see the pink color petals of the flower. So these are the petals and this is the sepal. You can see the differentiation. And here you can see ovary, different parts, stigma, style, ovary. So we'll study further in this lesson what are the different functions of all these parts. Okay, so these are the reproductive parts, this ovule, stamen, pollen tube. These are the reproductive organs inside the flower. We'll have a closer look of all these as we go in detail in this lesson. So if you see this corolla is nothing but the petals of flower. They are very attractive. They have so many colors of petals in a flower. So the colorful uh, color of these petals and the fragrant fragrance which comes out of this flower, it is to attract the insects for pollination. So when these insects they come and they just sit on these flowers, they attach this. You can see this pollen. You can see this pollen from this pollen tube, the small pollen grains. You can see the small pollen grains. So they attach to the wings or the legs of the flies or butterflies or whatever insect which comes and sits on this flower, honeybees. So these pollen grains, they stick to the parts of the insects. They stick to the parts of either it might be any insect, either it might be a bee, a honeybee, a wasp, or any insect. They just stick on their wings or legs. So they transfer this pollen grains to another flower. When this insects they sit on another flower, they just transfer these they just transfer these pollen grains to another flower where the cross pollination or the reproduction takes place. You can see in this picture the bee which sat on this flower, it is going on and sitting on another flower and it is transferring the pollen grains from one flower to another flower. You can see this sexual reproduction takes place in flowers. Pollination has to take place first from, so this bee will be the carrier. This bee will be responsible for the pollination. It carries the pollen grains from one flower to another. The transfer of pollen from anther to stigma. Anther to stigma. These are the reproductive organs, anther, stigma. So there will be a transfer and the pollination takes place. And like this, the reproduction takes place. And even in this picture also you can see it clearly. The pollen from stamens sticks to the bee, and when it visits on another flower, then it transfers like this. The cross pollination takes place. The transfer of pollen from another anther to stigma in flowers of different plants but same species is known as cross pollination. Self pollination and cross pollination are two types of pollination which takes place. So here there is a difference between the sexual reproduction, children. We'll see in detail about that. So we'll see the different parts. We have seen calyx, corolla, and now we'll see androecium and gynoecium. So these are the parts of flower. These are the parts of flower. And now we'll
Flower.
androecium first. We'll see androecium. Androecium is the third role in a flower. It is the third role in a flower. It consists of stamens. Stamens are made up of three parts, namely anther, stalk, and connective tissue. Stamens are made up of three parts. I'll show you the picture of the flower. Stamens are made of three parts. You can see in this picture, stamen are made up of anther, filament. You can see in the picture, anther, stalk, and connective tissue. So they are connected here. And now anther consists of pollen grains. Pollen grain contain male gametes. So here anther consists of pollen grain. Where is the anther here? You can see in this picture. Anther is connected to the filament. Anther is connected to the filament. It is the male part. Okay. And now coming to stalk. Stalk is the lining tube like stalk by a tissue called the connective tissue. Stalk is here where you can see the stalk. Stalk is the lining of the tissue of the stalk, which is called as connective tissue. So this connective tissue allows the free movement of anther. This connective tissue allows the free movement of anther. It is nothing but the stalk. It is nothing but the stalk, which you can call this as filament. Okay, so it is being attached here. And then androecium is the male reproductive part of the flower. Don't forget, androecium is the male reproductive part of the flower. Please underline it. Androecium is the male reproductive part of the flower. Yes. Uh,
Right.
Children, do not chat during class. So now coming to gynoecium. Gynoecium is the fourth role in a flower. It consists of carpels. It consists of carpel. Here you can see in this picture, you can see the carpel. You can see this carpel. The carpel consists of stigma, style, and ovary. Okay, carpel consists of stigma, style, and ovary. So this is the fourth wall in a flower. It consists of, so this ovary is the globular structure at the base of the carpel. You can see the ovary. It is a round shaped globular structure. Ovary you can see in this picture. It is a part of carpel. It is a part of carpel. So the stigma is the sticky end of the style. It is sticky to stick the pollen grain during pollination. During pollination, the pollen grain is being stick to the end of the style. In the gynoecium, gynoecium is the female reproductive part. This is the point to remember. Gynoecium is the female reproductive part in a flower. Okay. Underline this also. Carpel is composed of three parts, namely ovary, style, and stigma. So androecium is the male reproductive part in a flower, and gynoecium is the female reproductive part in a flower. Okay. Androecium and gynoecium are known as essential roles, essential parts, as they take part in reproduction. Androecium and gynoecium are known as, please underline it, essential roles, as they take part in reproduction. And the calyx and corolla are called as accessory role in a flower, as they help in reproduction. Calyx and corolla are the accessory roles in a flower, as they help in reproduction. A stalk-like structure that holds the flower together is called as pedicel. So this is the stalk-like structure. Once again, I'll just show it to you. So down pedicel, you can see. So it is a stalk-like structure. It is a, you can see this pedicel. The pedicel bears the flower. It bears the enlarged part of the flower. You can see this pedicel, a stalk-like structure which can hold the whole flower is called as pedicel. So the pedicel bear an enlarged part where all the four whorls are present. It is called the receptacle. It is called as, underline it, receptacle. Okay, I'll just erase it. Now Coming to sexual reproduction in plants. I think you're clear about this sexual reproduction in plants, how the pollination takes place from male
Ma'am?
organs to female. Yes,
Ma'am,
yes.
ma'am, your filament and stalk is same, ma'am.
Filament and stalk. If you see here,
Yes, ma'am.
filament
They
is the
both are
thing
same, ma'am.
which bear the anther. Filament is the thing which bear the anther.
Ma'am,
Yes,
not only the carpel, the
yes,
pedestal
stalk.
also comes under gynoecium.
Yes, even Nehadarshi is asking me, stalk and filament is same. Yes, stalk is also the same because it bears the anther, it bears the pollen grains.
Okay,
Here,
ma'am.
okay, yes, you asking me something, Nehita?
Ma'am, not only the carpels, there's total part of flower comes under gynoecium.
No, no, no. Again, the flower has male reproductive organs and female reproductive organs.
Means here the total para is continuation, ma'am. That's
So this which comes under andrecium and gynoecium. You can see under the gynoecium, you can see the carpel. Carpel comes under gynoecium. Carpel has how many parts?
three
Three.
parts.
What are they?
Uh,
Ovary,
ovary,
style,
style,
stigma.
stigma.
Okay. And now what are the male reproductive organs which are present in andrecium?
And in andrecium,
In
And
andrecium, there are the stamen means that stamen will have the anther,
the anther
stalk,
stalk,
and the not stalk, stalk and
pollen
the
grains. Anther contains the pollen grains.
yeah, and it will
Stamen.
contain the
And the pollen
connective,
grain
the
contains
connective,
the
connective.
male gamete.
Yeah, the main reproductive organ in the stamen.
Actually, ma'am, the androecium is consist of stamens.
Andrecium consists of stamen.
Stamens.
So this
Ma'am,
andrecium, it consists of anther, which consists of pollen grains. Pollen grains contain the male gamete. Okay. So that's why andrecium is the male reproductive part of the flower. Male reproductive part is the pollen grains which are present here. You can see in this picture. Just one second. Pollen grains which are there, anther, filament. So these anther and filament, they are present on the stamen. They come under stamen. So these are the
ma'am,
male reproductive.
once can you explain about the ovule?
Only this, only these two. Okay, one second. Only this, they come under male reproductive parts. This pollen grains. Again, all these three, they are female reproductive parts. These are the female reproductive parts. Only these
Ma'am, then what about the other parts
pollen
of a
grains.
typical flower?
Yes,
Means in the male reproductive parts there are stamen and the filament and the
yes,
female carpel, stigma
yes,
style ovary.
yes.
And there are some more parts,
Pollen,
na ma'am, like
pollen tube
petal,
also.
sepal.
Pollen tube also.
Yes, ma'am. And there are some other also, na ma'am, pedestal, petal. And these
Yes.
parts comes under?
These parts, what they do, what the sepals, what the petals do, they give color to the plant. They give, sorry, color to the flower. If the flower is attractive, if the flower is with beautiful color, then the insects get attracted. Then they carry the pollen grains from one flower to another. Then the process of pollination takes place, isn't it? So the need of this, if there is no base, if there is no pedicel, if there is no base, how can the flower get stick to the plant? So there are different
Yes.
functions like the receptacle. They give protection to the flower. They are layers of the flower. Only the male reproductive part and female reproductive part are the androecium and gynoecium, which are the part of this flower. Okay? Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Like you have legs. Why you have legs? What are the function of your legs? Because your main
To walk.
yes, to
walk.
walk.
To
So
balance
Support
ourselves.
our
you can
body.
stand
walk
straight.
and for
You can
support
stand
and balance.
straight with the help of legs. So even this pedicel, it gives supports to the flower. Without
Yes.
pedicel, how can a flower be? And even this outer covering of this flower, the uh,
Every
receptacle.
flower has a pedestal, ma'am.
Yes, and the other parts like corolla and the different parts, they give support. They are the layers. Again, there are layers in a flower. They give support to the flower, doesn't it? Like you wear clothes, they are protective for you, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So this flower, that's why the flower has so many parts. And here the process of sexual, again the different types of process, like here in this cross pollination and self pollination. What is the difference between cross pollination and self pollination? In self pollination, the transfer of pollen grains takes place from anther to stigma in the same flower. Like in this case, this flower, there are the two different parts like this pollen grain. Here you can see this grain, this yellow color pollen grain. Here you can see the stigma. There is a hole in this tube,
Yes, ma'am.
the tube-like structure which has hole here.
Yeah, ma'am. I can see the hole.
In self-pollination, in self-pollination, this pollen grain, it falls into this tube. It is self-pollination in some, only in some flowers. Only in some flowers, this pollen grain, it falls into this hole, into this tube, the stigma. Then the process of self-pollination takes place.
Ma'am,
Understood?
the pollen grain transfer from anther to stigma, stigma to anther.
From
And
from from this stigma, from anther to stigma. How can stigma to anther takes place? Because stigma is the tube here, isn't it? This
Yes.
So in this self-pollination, the transfer. So in some cases only the transfer of anther to stigma takes place in the same flower. Okay. Now different flowers, it doesn't take place in different flowers, but it can take place in different flowers of the same plant. Okay. Different flowers of same plant. They must be of same plant. Different flowers but of same kind. Understood? Like
ma'am, in same plant, flowers are different.
different flowers, yeah, on the same plant. They can be of, I mean, at separate distance. They can be at separate distance, but the same kind of flowers. I mean, the same color. The species must be same. The, there might be different flowers, but of same kind. Like rose flower, only they can have the pollination with the same rose flower. A hibiscus cannot go and pollinate with a rose flower. Okay,
That will create a unreal flower.
yeah. So here, now coming to pollination. Cross pollination is the transfer of pollen from anther to stigma in flowers with different plants, but same species is known as cross pollination. Here, the mediator is a bee, a honeybee. You can see a honeybee carries the pollen grains from one flower to another flower. It might be in any distance. The flower, the other flower might be at any distance. So this is cross pollination. Here, the bee is helping the pollen grain of one flower to go and settle down to carry out cross pollination. So the bee is helping here. Is it clear, children? Now
Yes,
coming to
ma'am.
Ma'am.
pollination and
Yes, ma'am.
fertilization.
Ma'am.
Now coming to main process of how it carries, how the fertilization takes place, how it happens. So this is a process. In this process of fertilization and pollination. So till now we have seen that the pollens will be carried out by bees and they'll be falling into the tube. The tube is called as stigma, and in through this tube the pollen grain it falls. It comes inside this tube. You can see this in this picture. The pollen grain is here. You can see here the pollen grain. It is at the top hole of this tube. It is present at the top. It is sticked at the stigma. It is being sticked. Now slowly it moves inside this pollen tube. Slowly it is moving. Here you can see it has been moved. And now this sperm cell will come and meet the female gametophyte, female egg. Now this pollen tube, pollen grain. The pollen grain separates and releases its, what is there in the pollen grain? There are sperm cells inside this pollen grain. So these sperm cells, they will enter into the egg. They come and meet the egg. They combine with the egg of the female. Eggs are there in the female gametophyte. So this is the gynecium, which is the female reproductive part. So inside this female reproductive part, eggs are there. So this male sperm cell, they come and meet the eggs of female, and then another new species is formed. Okay. Now this, the pollen tube contains the male gametes which pass through the tube and fuse with the ovules present in the flower, the female eggs. The union, underline this, the union of the male and female gametes takes place in the ovary. This is called as, the inner part is called as ovary. Takes place in the ovary. This act is known as fertilization. In females, in human beings, the female have the womb in which the baby, in the womb of female, the baby will be there. In the same way, in the female flower, it fertilizes, and then this process is called as fertilization. Okay, is it clear now?
Yes, ma'am.
Show you the video for this also, so that will be clear to you.
Ma'am also.
Now, fertilization results in the formation of zygote. Now, the zygote is formed. Okay, after fertilization. Now, male sperm cell, it meets with the female gametophyte, which is the egg. And now the male and female eggs, the male sperm cell, it meets a female egg, and now fertilization takes place. It results in the formation of zygote. It results in the formation of zygote. The zygote divides and redivides to form a mass of cells, which is called as embryo. Underline it, which is called as embryo. Remember these terms. Fertilization results in the formation of zygote. Fertilization of what? Fertilization of which cells? Which cell? Which cell?
Fertilization of the
Yes, fertilization of.
Union of male and female.
union of male and female gametes.
Female.
Yes, good.
Ovary.
Union of
Ovary.
they
Takes place in ovary.
they
In
form
the ovary.
they form zygote.
Right.
And now this zygote divides and redivides to form a mass of cell called embryo. This embryo gets its nutrition from the ovary. the embryo develops into a new
New.
plant.
New plant.
So usually you see the seeds which are there on the trees, on the
Yeah,
plants.
ma'am.
See the seeds. So these are the result of this fertilization. These are the results of this fertilization only. So again, these seeds, they fall down in soil, they bury deep into the soil. Again, a new plant comes out from this embryo. This embryo is nothing but seed from the plant which we get. Okay. I'll just show you a video regarding this so that will be